Welcome to the Dad Show podcast. How y'all doing?
Welcome to the Dad Show podcast, a show all about impacting, empowering, inspiring, and uplifting information to become a better dad, husband, man, and mentor. And now your host, Ryan Ladd.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Dad Show podcast. I want to thank y'all for being here, for listening, and for watching. I'm in Duluth, Georgia, so as y'all notice, I'm not in the normal studio, but I've got my man, Mr. Vincent Casey, here with me, who lives down in this area. He goes to church, as a matter of fact. I'm down here for work, and we hooked up on TikTok there, and just and got to talking, and he drove over, and man, it's going to be a blessing. We've talked about a bunch of stuff off camera that y'all are going to be blessed today, and I'm going to be blessed to hear a lot of it too. So Vincent, man, thank you for being here. Thank you for driving over and being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It is a blessing to be here. And it's a blessing to be in the room with another dad that not only enjoys fatherhood, but takes it seriously. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I remember the wisdom was given to me years ago, and they said, Minister Vincent, you should enjoy fatherhood on purpose. And I'm like, enjoy fatherhood on purpose. I've never thought about it like that. And when I began to be intentional about enjoying fatherhood on purpose, my relationships changed with my kids dramatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being present and just being intentional with that time and thanking God for that blessing every day.
Absolutely.
So give us a little insight, man. What's your background, your family, your wife, give us a little.
So I am 44 years old. I am actually on my second marriage. I have 4 sons biologically with 2 bonus kids. I have a bonus son and a bonus daughter, which is amazing and crazy all at the same time because I had been used to boys.
Yeah.
But the awesome thing in having a daughter now is it brings some estrogen into the house.
Yeah.
It balances out the emotions. But the one of the greatest things that God gave me in having a daughter is understanding how important it is for a father to be an example.
Yep.
We always look at how we need to be the examples for our sons, but we don't look at how we need to be the examples for our daughters. So it gave me a whole lot more empathy and compassion for women in general, now having a daughter that I have to cultivate. My cousin's a big-time R&B singer, and I came to kick it with him in Georgia. I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I came to kick it with him in Georgia back in 2010. And when I did that, he asked me, he said, what do you think about going on the road with me? And at this time, my younger sons, they were 1 and 3. And I was like, I got 2 young boys at home. I can't just leave them with their mom. And so I said, let me go talk to her and I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I went back home and I talked to her and she said, go, it's a once in a lifetime thing.
How are you going on the road? Like you were going to sing with him or you were?
I was going to, he wanted me to come and train him because I'm a personal trainer. I own a gym in Marietta, Georgia called Minister of Muscle Personal Training. And he wanted me to train him and also do security.
Okay.
And so, and back home at this time, this is 2010, I was doing security at a strip club and I was selling drugs, and so it's like, I went home and I talked to my kid's mom and she was like, listen, go. She said, if you go, you don't have to look over your shoulder anymore. You may not make the same money that you was making in the streets, but it's legal. And so I originally thought I was coming to Georgia to live this rich lifestyle, but God quickly allowed me to understand that was his lifestyle. And he was just using him to give me a way out of no way.
Okay.
And so after being in Georgia just for a couple months, I remember going over my brother's house, and my brother had lived here 2 years before I got here. And when I went over his house, my brother was different. And I'm looking at him and he's glowing and he's married and he's got a house and his sons, they live with him from Toledo. And I'm like, bro, like what's going on? What is this? He said, V, man, God. I'm like, God, what? What did he say? Was his voice deep? How do you know it was God? And he said to me, he said, V, God calls on all of us, but it's up to us to make sure that he don't get the voicemail. And he said, so I can sit up here and tell you about God all day, but he wants you to find out for yourself.
Wow, man. Hold on. That's powerful. What did you just say? That you don't want God to call on us and don't want it to go to voice.
He said that God calls on all of us, but it's up to us to make sure that he don't get the voicemail.
Dude, that's so powerful, man.
Man, listen.
We can stop the podcast right now, dude. That's enough. Golly, that's so
And
cool.
the amazing thing about that is it stuck with me. As you see, it's a part of my testimony to this day. And so I went home and I started reading the Bible. It was just a visual exercise at that time. I didn't know what I was doing. I started praying. I didn't know how to pray. I was just saying what I thought was right. I started listening to Kirk Franklin and gospel music because to me, this is what you do. I didn't want him to call and get the voicemail.
Wow.
And I kid you not, after doing that for about a month or 2 months, I had went through some traumatic events, all happening at the same time. And I'm like, Lord, I'm used to making a way out of no way. I don't know how to do that in this. It's too much going on at one time. So I need you to tell me something. And I remember calling my boss. I was working at LA Fitness and GNC at the time. I remember calling my boss and I said, God is going to tell me something today. And when I go to church, and she said, Vince, if you believe God is going to tell you something, you don't have to wait to go to church to hear from God. She said, you can go in your bedroom and pray. You can hear from him right now.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And I went and I prayed, and I kid you not, I heard the audible voice of God as clear as day. And he showed me a picture. And in this picture, all of these faces popped up in this picture. And he said, you must remove these people out of your life. Some of the people were from here in Georgia. Some of the people were from back in Ohio. Then it switched scenes, and the scene when it switched scenes, it showed me sitting in a room by myself, leaning over a coffee table with the Bible open. He said, "Focus on me." And then the third part, it shifted scenes again. And the third part, it went to meet at the altar, getting married. And I was so blown away because I heard God, and could nobody take that from me. That I drove to church that day, and I walked into church. I set my Bible on the last pew closest to the door, and I walked past everybody, and I got on my knees at the altar. And I'm on my knees at the altar, Ryan, and I'm crying and I'm sobbing, and I'm like my nose is snotting and my eyes are swole. And I'm at this altar for like 30 minutes. And I remember the pastor praying over me. And I kind of got coherent, like they don't even know me at this church. And I'm sitting here in front of these people and I'm crying. I'm on the ground. I'm like, let me go to my seat.
Let me go back in my closet.
Let me get up and get myself together. And I stood up. And when I stood up, I went to turn around. And it was like the Holy Spirit snatched me back. And he said, Vincent, I'm not done with you yet. And then I really began to cry. I really began to travail. And I said, Lord, if you save me, I will not give the enemy any more glory in my life. And making that confession, I could feel the chains breaking off of my wrist. I could feel the chains breaking off of my ankles. And God began to set me free. I ended up getting baptized, and I came up out of the water filled with the precious gift of the Holy Ghost with the evidence of speaking in tongues. And my life began to change from that point. I had quit fornicating. I had quit smoking. Like I had quit doing everything cold turkey, and I began to live a life for Christ.
Wow. Amen, man. That's
Absolutely.
so awesome.
Amen.
And how old were you at this time whenever you got?
I was, it was 2000. I was 31.
31.
I was 31.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's never too late.
It's never
the
too
whole
late.
moral of that story, man. Because I same thing real quick. I got baptized when I was like 9 years old. I was a Christian, quote unquote, but I wasn't living my life.
Right.
And so at 27, 28 years old, me and my wife rededicated our lives to the Lord, and that same. So just because, you haven't been living your life for the life, I'm trying to speak for, those that are listening right now that, even though you think, man, I'm too old, I'm too ragged, I've done too many bad things, I've done too many wrongdoings, I've wronged too many people. No, God wants to use you. God made you for a reason. He wants to use you. So it's not too late. You're not too old. You're not too bad to rededicate your life to the Lord.
A lot of times, God shows up. So we come from a place oftentimes where we're so used to figuring things out. And God is like, when you come to the end of yourself, then I can move. And I always say when I first got saved that I was so full of myself that I had to empty myself in order to receive Jesus,
Yeah.
And so my encouragement would be to tell people it's okay to not have all the answers. It doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't make you insecure. It doesn't make you inadequate. It makes you human. But the second that you can admit that you don't have the answers and you don't know what to do, God is like, oh, here I go.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
Come over here. I'll show you what to do.
And that's when he showed me the most, like no, God, I'm not going to go over there because I don't know what to do over there.
Right.
No, I'm not going to contact Vincent in Duluth, Georgia, because I don't know this man. I don't, but no, God opens this door, and whenever that door is open, dude, he shows a path that's more clear than you've ever seen before.
Absolutely.
And so, like, jump out in faith, man. That's what he wants. He wants you to completely release from your comfort zone.
Yes.
And allow him to drive you.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
And it came up in a podcast, so I don't want to talk the whole time. I want you to, but it came up in a podcast, and this was one of those revelation moments for me, man. So the guy was talking about whenever a dad goes into the son's bedroom at night, and he's got a device on his leg that they have to tighten up every night, and it straightens up the leg.
Okay.
And it hurts. It's painful to keep trying to get that son's leg really straight.
Right.
And he's like, I go in there and I've got my tools. I'm ready to tighten it up and, start stretching that leg a little more. And he's like, no, Daddy, not tonight.
Right.
No. And then it hit me. I was like, man, that's what I do with my kids every single day, every single surgery, doctor's appointment, anytime through therapies, all that. I'm pushing you for the better of tomorrow. And dude, whenever I said that, I was like, that's God, man.
Absolutely.
No, God, I don't want to go through this trial. No, God, don't take that person from me. No, God, don't put me through this relationship. But he's telling us, I have to put you through it for the better of tomorrow. And dude, whenever I thought, I'm getting chills right now because it was like that. And instead of taking the, why God, why me? Like, why am I going through this? Why is this happening today? Instead of taking that attitude, thank you, God, for putting me through this and this happening for me, not to me.
Yes.
For the better of your kingdom, to grow your kingdom. And man, that was so powerful whenever I heard that. So that,
That's the bomb. I always had, since I've been saved, I've always had an attitude to believe only. And I don't know where I got it from. I don't know how I end up having that kind of faith to just believe only. But there was a lot of times I didn't understand. I didn't get it. I couldn't figure it out. But I never let it affect me just believing only. And I can see a lot of times our kids, they don't understand certain directions we give them. We don't do that. Go this way. I don't need you doing that, or I have this for you. And they don't know, but they got questions that sometimes we can answer and sometimes we can't. Sometimes they just have to trust that we know what's best. And God treats us the same way. God is like, I need you to go this direction, not direction. Yeah, that's a good thing, but that's not a God thing. Yeah. And we like, well, Lord, why not this way and why not that? And as we continue to take this faith walk, we walk further and further down the line in faith, we can say, oh, okay, God, that's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amen. The conversation we had prior to this about you saying you didn't want the relationship with your son now, your younger sons, as you had kind of with your older sons, and God told you something. So I don't want to spoil that story. I'd like for you to tell it in your perspective again.
Gotcha. So I got saved in 2011, and I began to live right. And my son, in 2013, I got married. My older sons were 12 and 13 at the time. And my kids' mom, they called me and they said, listen, you different. You changed. Your son, they need to come stay with you now. And so I was like, of course, so they moved to Georgia. They came to stay with me, but I was still unlearning some of the ways that I was raised through trauma. I was still unlearning some of the ways that I was raised that was really detrimental to me being the best version of myself. And so because of that, and I grew up in a single parent household. It's 6 boys, 2 girls, single mom taking care of all of us by herself.
Wow. Dad
wasn't around. And so there was no positive male role models. There was no healthy male leadership. There was the men that I seen, that I mimicked at a young age were the guys that pulled up in the neighborhood and they were driving the nice cars, or they dressed a certain type of way, or they had the jewelry, and they had all of the girls. And to me, this is what a man does. So that's what I began to mimic myself from. And so after I got saved, I looked at it like, as long as I'm not doing these things, then I'm okay. So I initially was raising my older sons as if I wasn't there. Like the way that I disciplined them, the way that I corrected them, it was the way that because my dad would show up once every so many years. And even when he did show up, he showed up with an iron fist. Didn't your mama tell you to do this? Didn't your mama tell you to do that? That's one thing that he did not play when he did show up, is us being disrespectful in any way, shape, or form to our mom. And so he ruled with the iron fist. And so I was raising my older sons with fear.
Yeah.
And so it was like I was bullying them. I was intimidating them. If you don't do what you're supposed to be doing, then I'm going to snatch you up, or I'm going to grab you up, or I'm going to do this to you. And as I began to mature in Christ, I realized that they had to deal with the growing pains of me growing. They had to deal with the growing pains of me maturing in this faith walk. And about time that I really started to have an understanding of who I was in God, I remember sitting my older sons down, and they were juniors and seniors in high school. They were juniors in high school at this time. And I asked them, I said, I want you to tell me the opinion that you have of me. And you're not going to get in trouble. There won't be any issue, like I won't do anything, but I won't know if you don't tell me.
Yeah.
The first thing that one of them said was, Dad, we think you're a hypocrite. And my first thought was, I'll put you in a headlock. But I just told him that this is a safe space.
Yeah.
And so I need to know. And so I asked questions like, why am I a hypocrite? And he said, because you asked us to do things you don't even do. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
you're right. I received that. And I never desired to be a hypocrite. I just want you to be better than me. But in him saying that, I realized every positive thing or everything God has called us to be, he gave us an example. So I was being a hypocrite because I was asking them to do things that I wasn't exemplifying. And then the second one said, we feel like you throw money in our face. I'm like, I don't throw money in your face. Like, it's not even, I can't even imagine throwing money in your face. They said, well, we didn't ask to be here. And you tell us that if we didn't have this or we didn't have that, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have this, or if it wasn't for you, we didn't have that. And I was like, wow, I said, you're right. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, the very thing that I'm doing to y'all, I hate being done to me. I remember, just a little sidebar, I remember when those two were young, I remember going to the blood bank and getting the plasma so I can have money to buy them Pampers. Why? Because I didn't want to ask nobody in my family or anybody for nothing, because I didn't want them to throw it in my face, or I didn't want them to say that I wouldn't have it if it wasn't for them. And so I never was a fan of that. But in a different form, I was doing that to them.
Yeah.
And so they end up going off to college. And when they went off to college, it's like I didn't exist. And I'm thinking like, I'm making up excuses. And I'm like, well, when I was their age, I didn't want to talk to my parents either. And but I'm like, but I changed my life and I provided a different life for them. And I was like, Lord, I don't want the same relationship with my younger boys as I have with my older boys, because I can see the wedge or the gap or the breach that I don't have with my older boys. And God said, if you don't want the relationship with your younger boys as you have with your older boys, then I need you to father them how I father you.
Wow.
And I was like, and I began to ponder on that, like, how do you father me?
Yeah.
And he fathers me with understanding. He fathers me with love. He listens to me in the small things. So then I know that when I bring the big things to him, he'll listen. So when my younger sons, when they would bring little stuff they would bring me like little goofy videos on YouTube and stuff, I would listen to every video. I would randomly go in their bedroom and lay in their bed and just ask them questions and talk to them. I made them understand that their voice mattered and their voice was important. When they got in trouble, instead of me highlighting what they did wrong, I let them know the consequences of what they did wrong. And this is a better way to do that so you don't find yourself in those situations. I found myself being more transparent with them in my flaws, faults, and shortcomings, and also in the things that I did good. So that way they can know how to better make decisions and different things like that. And I kid you not, I remember one time my sons, they were 13 or 14 years old. And this was weird to me because growing up, in a predominantly Black community, it was very homophobic where I come from. And so my boys was up under me all the time. And I would be sitting on the couch and one would come sit next to me and he'll lay his head on my shoulder, and the other one would come sit and he'll lay his head on my knee. Or if I'm laying in the bed, they like, Dad, can we come in your room? And they come jump in the bed beside me. And I'm like, Lord, where I come from, this ain't what it's supposed.
Yeah.
This is not okay. So I'm like, God, what is this? What's going on here? And God said to me, he said, when you're in my presence, isn't that how you want to lay in my lap?
Wow.
When you're in my presence, isn't that how you want to lay on my shoulder? And God showed me that because I was fathering them how he fathered me, then they were growing up emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
They were growing up emotionally stable. They were growing up in a place of being whole instead of like me being a man that had to heal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's so good. And there's so much stuff there to dissect. I don't know that I can hit on all of it, man. But that is so true. Exactly. All that of what you say, that to father with the grace, to,
Yes.
to have the patience, and instead of pointing out what you did incorrect,
Right.
let's talk about what you did correctly and move around that so that those incorrections don't happen.
Absolutely.
Instead of because how much can kids learn, or even you or your wife, if all you're going to do is yell and tell me what I did wrong, what I did incorrect? So
I grew up with a wound, and this is a trigger that I just got over. I'm 44 years old. This is a trigger that I just got over at 42. When I met my wife, when she would give me her feelings, she would always say what I was doing wrong, and I could never listen to her feelings. And I'm like, Lord, there's no way possible that I care about her feelings, but she could never say them without me getting triggered. So God, what is going on? And God showed me, in her giving her feelings, it highlighted what I did wrong. When it highlighted what I did wrong, it caused me to be triggered. Why did it cause me to be triggered? Because all the way dating back to when I was a kid, every time I did something wrong, it was magnified, it was illuminated, it was blown up.
Yeah.
But when I did something good, when I did something positive, my parents or nobody around me kept that same energy. They didn't illuminate the good things. They didn't celebrate me in those things. And so I became more wrong conscious, more sin conscious.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to reproduce that in my sons. I didn't want to reproduce that in my children. So I want them to be good conscious, or the positive outlook, or constantly encouraging and uplifting them, let them know, like, yeah, you made this bad decision, and if you continue on down this road, this could potentially be the consequence, but you're too smart for that.
Yeah.
I've seen you when you apply yourself. You're so great when you do this so effective. And the blessing in it is my older sons, they used to fear the consequence of what I would do to them if they messed up. My younger sons, they fear letting me down.
Yeah.
And that's a difference with parenting with fear versus parenting with love. Because like I know, with God, we don't fear what God is going to do to us. We don't want to let our Father down.
Yeah, exactly.
We want him, when it's all said and done and we standing before him on Judgment Day, we want our Father to say, well done, my son.
Amen. Yes.
And so I thank God for that understanding, that revelation of parenting them how he parents me.
Yeah. So how has it changed your life as far as growing up without a dad to what you wanted to change when you had kids? Like
to say it one more time.
So like whenever you were growing up and you said your dad wasn't present, your mom was raising you in the home.
Right.
How did that change you whenever you had children? Did it make you want to be a better dad, or
you know what? When I first, so I would say two things. One is I always had the perspective that I want to be a better father than my father was. And as I matured, God told me, he said, you don't let your parents, who are you to judge them?
Yeah.
Who are you to make them the foundation of where you want to go? How about you allow my word to be the foundation? Because you don't know the stories that they don't tell you.
That's so good.
You don't know the experiences that they had in order to sacrifice the place that you are. All you can see is where they weren't there.
Yeah.
And if you allow them to be the foundation, then you are condemning them to judgment for what you didn't have.
Yeah.
And I was like, I never looked at it like that.
I mean,
and with God giving me that revelation, I became a better parent at 38 years old when I called my father and I told him Happy Father's Day for the first time in my life.
wow.
And what made me do it is because I realized I had all this resentment. And I watched my mom take care of 8 kids by herself. My dad wasn't there. And I had all this resentment towards my dad. And God said, you're judging your father, but you run a business right now that takes care of your family from a seed that your father sown.
Yeah.
And he began to walk me, and my dad was always in and out of jail. He walked me back till I was 4 or 5 years old. And when my dad would come home, he would make me and my brother do push-ups. He would make us do sit-ups. He bought us little curl bars. He made us exercise. He made us work out.
Yeah.
I own a gym right now that provides for my family. So I'm judging him for how he wasn't there and what his contribution wasn't when the very thing that is providing for my family came from a seed that he sown.
Wow.
I kid you not, Ryan. I called him and I said, Dad, I said, I'm sorry. I said, I've been judging you. I've been resenting you. I've been holding you to the ways that you weren't there. I said, but the seed that you sown allows me to take care of my family. I said, Dad, I forgive you. And I want you to know that I see you from today forward. And when tomorrow comes, I see you from tomorrow forward. I said, I love you. Happy Father's Day. And hopefully we can build from this place forward. And my dad cried like a big baby.
Wow.
Oh, he cried like a big baby. And in him crying, he said, I want you to know that these aren't sad tears. These are happy tears. He said, I'm crying because it's like my soul is being cleansed. He said, because Vincent, what you don't understand, and this blew my mind, and I don't know if God answered it or not, but I can see the fruit in him doing this. My dad said, he said, Vincent, I prayed, and I told you my dad was always in and out of jail. He said, Vincent, I was locked up one time. And when I was locked up, he said, I prayed to God and I told God, I will do all the time that needs to be done as long as my sons don't have to see the inside of a jail. And I kid you not, out of 6 boys, none of us ever been in jail.
Wow.
And Ryan, before I got saved, before I gave my life to Christ, I was selling drugs. I was selling weed. I was doing all kinds of felony activity. I had spent time in the county on like the weekend where, you go down there drunk, you sober up, they send you home. But I never been to prison. I never had any felonies. And when my dad said that he prayed that prayer, I can see how none of us, I can see the fruit of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a coincidence or God answering his prayer, but I'm judging him for how he's not there. And his prayer is that he will stay away as long as we don't have to experience the inside of a jailhouse.
And there's no coincidences. Nothing happens by coincidence.
Listen. Tell me about it. It blew my mind. It let me know of how much we can judge our parents and not know their story.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, 100. How has your relationship with your dad been since that conversation?
Oh, it's great. Oh, it's so good. I find myself talking to him, and we still probably talk like once every couple months. And when I talk to him, I find myself ministering to him. I find myself encouraging. My dad been in the streets as long as I can remember. And he's still out there a little bit now, but I can tell at 60, if I'm 44, he's 62. I can tell at 62, he's tired.
Yeah.
He's tired. And I see him more times now than ever before, calling me and my other siblings to pour into him, to encourage him, like we are all he has. So I thank God for bringing us to a place of maturity where we can love on him despite what we felt we didn't receive from him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of having that anger and all that.
Yeah.
Give it to God 100% and he'll take care of it.
Absolutely.
The relationship right now renewed. So he's calling for that fulfillment that he sees in you all. Just like you've seen with your brother when you moved down to Georgia. Like he has so much fulfillment through God that I don't have.
I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah. And so your dad, I'm sure sees that same thing whenever he talks to you, talks to your siblings, right now, like, and eventually it'll click. And eventually you'll get to him and he'll be,
And my dad always says, and he knows the word, and he always says, if I was no earthly good, then I wouldn't be here. He said, but I got a story to tell.
Yeah.
And I believe it. And I believe in the right time, at the right season. The Bible says that there's a time and a season for everything. I believe at that right time, at that right season, God is going to reel him in, just like he did the rest of us.
And one thing I want to go back to, which was very huge, and I don't want to just pass over this because I feel like it is a really big part of being a dad, being a husband, being a friend, just being somebody that you meet on the street. That clear, concise communication that you had with your older sons.
Right.
Of, creating that safe space and letting them tell you exactly how you feel. Because even though they were telling you, you still got defensive. You still, no, you're it now. Oh, I got to back up a little bit.
Right.
But man, that's so powerful, dude.
Right.
For one, to have that open communication with your kids, and that opened the door to now your younger kids, that you have that clear lines of communication.
Yeah.
But in this world today, with the way social media is and the internet and just the way the outside world is, like, if I can't come to my dad and tell you how I feel or what's going wrong, you sure don't want me finding it somewhere else.
Right.
And
there's a lot of dads that haven't had healthy male leadership or emotionally healthy men as examples for them. And because we didn't have that, we're the generation that's doing the work to give that to our children.
Yeah.
But the challenge is, just think of how many fathers aren't doing the work in order to provide a safe space emotionally for themselves, to be that emotionally safe space for their kid.
Yeah.
And so that is a very rough place to be in.
Yeah, because if you don't create it, then more likely they're going to see the inside of that prison, or they're
Absolutely
be looking at porn on the internet, or and especially, man, you've got a daughter now, and
right.
I've got a young daughter, and I don't want them going out and finding some other male figure, to cater to them or anything, or use them, abuse them, and all that. I want my daughter. There's an issue, or even if there's not an issue, I want you coming to me. I want you to feel safe in coming to me.
Absolutely.
And dude, you hit, now that I'm talking about our daughters, I'm thinking of something else you said earlier about creating that example for your sons to know how this is how you're supposed to treat a woman.
Right.
This is what you're supposed to do for them. It's how you're supposed to love. You're supposed to take care of them. You're supposed to love your wife as Christ loved the church, or loves the church, not love the church, but loves the church. But then on the flip side of that, now you've got a daughter and you see, oh, I've got to show her how she is supposed to be treated.
Exactly.
What she's supposed to be looking for. It ain't all about the being used and abused and all that.
Absolutely. You know what I learned? Another great thing that I learned in having a daughter is daughters learn emotional health from their fathers.
Wow.
And God showed me that, because oftentimes women are emotional. God made women more emotional, made men more logical. When I got married and my wife brought my daughter into the picture, my daughter's emotions was all over the place. And it took me coming into the picture and allowing her to understand, listen, you can have your feelings, you can have your emotions, but we're not going to get over emotional about this thing because you're not getting your way, or we're not going to be emotional to try to manipulate to make things go a certain type of way. And it teaches her healthy emotions. And when a father is not in the picture, then women oftentimes become overly emotional because they didn't have that dad in the picture that can see stuff from a logical place. Most times when the daughter is emotional, mom's handling with emotion. We got too emotional, And so I can see how when even if my daughter, she could do something where, let me see, like her mom could tell her, you're going to bed early tonight because you didn't finish your homework. And she'd be like, oh, mama. And I could be like, and I'll come in and I'll be like, your mom said you're going to bed early tonight because you didn't do your homework. And she says, yes, sir. Yeah. She knows, like she understands from a father that you don't use those emotions because you don't agree with something.
Yeah.
That it's okay that this is the decision that mom made and you just abide by it. But just imagine without a father being in the picture, those unhealthy emotions or manipulative emotions or being overly emotional just run wild.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you don't want them to go find that comfort
in somebody else
and
or in the wrong person.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Because men know how to manipulate those emotions or play on those
take
emotions.
advantage of it.
Exactly.
So how, when the daughter was brought into the picture with your wife, how did that change you to want to treat your wife better? Like, because it makes you have a different outlook, right?
Right.
So
at first, I kid you not, I didn't know what to do. I let mom make all the decisions. I let mom just do it all. Cause then I kind of stayed back and kind of observed how she was with the daughter. But then I would watch when when mom wasn't around, I would watch how the daughter felt safe with me. You know, she's not trying to, and what I love about it is I could discipline my daughter and I could be like, you know, you weren't supposed to be doing that. And she'd be like, yes, sir. Can I have a hug, Dad? You know, like the love doesn't change. Like they need that order and that structure.
Yeah.
But I learned in my daughter, it taught me how to check my demeanor, my tone, my delivery when it comes and when it listens to my wife. And my wife, she said it to me. She checked me one time. She says, the level of care that you give when you're talking to her, you don't give me that. And I was like, I do, but I didn't. So it checked me because at the end of the day, she's still a daughter. And although I'm not her father, God has put me in a position still as a father to protect, provide, to cover, you know? And so I have to make sure it's even more intentional that I have to be with my wife because of how she has experienced life and the traumas that has happened to her. I have to be more intentional about being a safe space for her so that way she can trust the safety that God is allowing me to bring.
Yeah. The whole aspect of showing the daughter, you know,
exactly,
because it made me whenever, you know, I had my daughter, it wasn't that I treated my wife bad,
right?
But I didn't pay attention to all those small
little details. Yeah.
And whenever I had a daughter and she was of age to start seeing all this stuff, now I'm like, oh, well, maybe I need to start doing this a little more.
Right.
I need to start paying attention to this and just those little bit. I mean, just as simple as walking by her in the house and, you know, rubbing her arm.
Yep.
Or, you know, she's sitting in a chair and massaging her shoulders for a minute, or just walking up and say, look, babe, I love you. Like, thank you for being my wife. Thank you for cooking dinner. Just small things that I want my daughter and my son both to see and acknowledge that this is healthy.
Right.
And
I have a video on social media on my Instagram. It's got like 13 million views.
Wow.
And it was me and my bonus daughter at our wedding. And this blessed me so much. We're doing the father-daughter dance. And in doing the father-daughter dance, I'm talking to her and I'm like, I'm the best bonus dad in the world. And she says to me, and she has been calling me Denims for 2 years since she know me. And Denims is the dad on Bluey, on the cartoon.
All right.
And so she's always called me Denims. And while we're doing the father-daughter dance, I said to her, I said, I'm the best bonus dad in the world. And she looks at me and she says, well, technically you're my dad because you married my mom.
Wow.
Right. I broke down.
I was about to say, how do you hold it together, man?
I did not hold it together. I'm talking about it's just rain. Like it broke down. I broke down like it was one of the most touching, most emotional things because I'm not like they're my wife's ex-husband. He kind of abandoned them. And I could understand. And I remember telling her this before I even knew she was my wife. I said, I believe that God has assigned me to your children. And I didn't know why, I didn't know what, but after we start talking and I begin to get more understanding, I realized that their dad, that he had ghosted them.
And thank God that it was you that was put in the life and them not finding somebody to take advantage of.
Exactly.
So how has it changed having a daughter now? Because you're used to raising boys.
Yes.
That, the whole, you know, raising and punishment and everything else is completely different.
Right.
And you've decided to change your ways and have more open communication with your younger son.
Right.
So how has having a daughter changed also that you parent your sons as well? Because that's two separate.
My sons always say, if that was us, it'd be a different story, Dad. And I would say this. I actually discipline them the same, but I don't discipline them with the same language. You know, with my sons, I can be straightforward. I can be cut and dry. I say what I mean what I say. I'm very assertive, very direct. And I look at it with my sons because they, you know, being in shape and being big, they can be intimidated by me.
Yeah.
But I realize if they can stand up and man up to me, then they'll never be intimidated by somebody, by a job opportunity, by anyone out in the world. And so I'm very direct, I'm very bold, I'm very assertive when it comes to my sons, and it teaches them to be the same way. With my daughter, I talk a lot more gentle. It's a lot more gentle because I don't want to be scary to her. You know what I'm saying? What I found is my wife, her love language, I ain't even gonna say her love language. When I'm showing my wife a lot of attention, like she's just extra giddy and laughy and jokey and playful, like she eats it up. And I realize that our daughter's the same way. And so like if I'm coming in the house and I'm overstimulated because I had a long day and I don't really say too much, then my daughter, she'll kind of look at me and say, "Hey, Dad, love you, Dad." But she kind of won't bother me. But if I come in and I'm extra jokey and I'm extra playful and I'm giving her all the attention, oh, she's sitting up under me and she's like, "Mom, look at me. I'm laying on Dad," you know? And so
I want her to be jealous, huh?
Absolutely. And I realized this in my bonus daughter and her brother is I have to be more intentional with them because their father walked away. And one thing that we know is God is a father. And God being a father is the source and source of identity. He is a cultivator. It is God that, and a cultivator is to till, to plant, to grow. It's to till, to break it down, to plant, put that word in, and to grow you into who he's called you to be. And they didn't have that because he walked away. And so I realized that I have to be even more intentional because when a parent walks away, the thing that is present spiritually is the spirit of rejection, is the spirit of abandonment.
Yeah.
It is inevitable that they feel these things. I remember end of 2023, beginning of 2024, he had asked about his dad and she hadn't really told him anything. He just knew that he hadn't been around. And she finally told him, she said, "Listen, I've reached out to your dad. I have tried to get him to see y'all like I've done." She basically gave him the whole rundown and told him like he didn't want anything to do with you guys. He signed over the rights to me. And they're driving home from a church event. And she calls me. She said, "Listen, I need you to come out here with Matt because I don't know what to do." And I go outside, Ryan. It hurt me how broken this young man was. I have never seen a kid nor adult in my life at 44 years old cry as hard and be as hurt as this young man was. And I didn't know what to say. I just held on to him and I just embraced him. But what happened in that is the spirit of rejection, is the spirit of abandonment. He's not going to look at it from the decision that his father made. He's going to look at it of, why am I unworthy to be wanted? Why did you leave me? And so I am very intentional about loving on them, about catering to them, about caring for them, about making sure that I don't treat them no different than I treat all of the rest of the kids, because I want them to know that they aren't rejected, they're accepted. I want them to know that they aren't defective, that they're loved. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it definitely, not even in just my bonus daughter, it has made me more intentional about them both in general.
And your presence, man, that I don't want to pass over that. When you embraced him and your presence of just saying, "Look, I'm here.
Right.
I'm not going to be that person that's just going to leave you.
Right.
I'm here for you no matter what." And, you know, there's a story with that kids bring us a lot of stuff, and us as dads or even our wives brings us stuff that we want to fix. Like, you know, we're fixers, man. We want to get down to the problem, right? Tell me how I can fix it. Tell me how I can help.
Right.
And we don't have to do that.
Right.
All we need to do is embrace.
All
and
we
hold
need to
them
do is embrace.
and give them our presence and our attention. And that's so strong that, I mean, I hate to hear that their dad left them.
Right.
But I'm so proud of you for stepping up and stepping into that position and loving them and taking the extra effort to, you know, fight those battles. Because I'm assuming at first it was not easy for them to accept you or even open up to you, because they didn't want to open up, and then you just hit the road too.
Especially the daughter. I said the daughter. My daughter, when I first started coming around, I couldn't come around without her bringing up her dad, because it's all she knew.
Yeah.
You know, And so it don't matter if I'm joking and playing, if I do something funny, if I'm hugging her mom, she's like, Mom, I miss my dad. Like that was the answer. But our son, he was still waiting on his dad. He still had an attitude like, you're not my dad, you know? And the crazy thing is, I would say probably just last week, he called me Pops for the first time.
Wow.
Since he know me, he's called me Mr. Casey. But he called me Pops for the first. He said, Pops, can I get on the game? I said, listen, you can get on the game 2 times.
Say it again, you can get on 3.
I can see him being comfortable, him letting his guard down and opening up.
Yeah.
And we have very intimate conversations that normally boys won't have with their fathers. You know what I'm saying? But because of I already had to practice with my sons, I knew how to kind of reel him into a place of him knowing that he's safe.
Yeah.
You know?
And that speaks volumes for you as a man and as a Christian man to, you know, it'd be easier for any man to say, okay, go get your dad. I'm out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or, you know, just because the rejection portion of, you know, those little things hurt, but you as a man and man, I like I said, I'm not just saying that as I'm proud of you for sticking in and being there, because that's huge, man, to fight that battle. And then you gain their trust, and now showing them as much love and compassion and Christ's love on top of that, man, it is so big, and in a way that they're going to grow up and what they're going to see and what they're going to seek through the rest of their life because of the difference that you've made in them.
It blessed me because they both have said, I want my last name to be Casey.
Wow.
And
that's awesome, dude.
Because they look at mom, and mom's last, you know, she's got my last name. And the daughter's like, I don't want nothing different. I need to be just like mom. That's dad. I want my name Casey. And the son came to me. He said the same thing. He said, Mr. Casey, what do you think about me changing my last name Casey? I said, listen, I talked to your mom about it, but I would be honored, you know. And so I believe by God's grace, he's taught me a little bit, and it's rubbing off. By God's grace, I'm doing something right.
Isn't it so cool, man, to see, like, when you were going through all this stuff, through your divorce, through the move to Georgia, through your time on the streets, through coming to Christ, and all these trials and tribulations and everything, like, you're like, man, why, God?
Why? Right.
And now you're on this side of it. Isn't it so cool to see and thank God for everything that you've been through?
It makes sense when God says he works all things to the good. And so I may not have understood the process at that time, but seeing what he worked to the good from that process and how I can better father. And I got this confidence, Ryan, and I don't mean this in a boastful way, but because of what I've allowed God to invest, I believe I can father anybody.
Yeah.
Because I believe that I have the spirit of fatherhood, and God teaching me how to cultivate, how to be the source, how to break down, like you break down the soil, to plant the seed, to grow it. I know how to nurture. So I just believe like that it could be a grown man and that didn't have his father. And God has given me tools that can help him, that can help heal the boy in him so he can become a better man.
Well, I mean, you're qualified. You know, you told me a minute ago that your dad wasn't hardly in your life whenever you were growing up, that your mom. So why would I want to go to somebody that's had their dad all their life and knows what it's like to have him at home every single day? Who better qualified to teach someone like that? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
My dad, not to harp on this aspect, but, you know, my dad was a provider. He went to work. He was at work. And, you know, whenever I played baseball, he was the coach, but he was the one that was, you hit 5 home runs, but you missed second base. You missed that ground, or, you know, you know what I mean? Like, picking out, like you said, all the positives.
Right.
He picked out the negatives because he thought pointing out my negatives
was going to make you better.
Is what's going to make me better. I already know how to do this stuff good.
Right.
But pointing out them negatives, and man, I tell you what, that's affected me my whole life.
Listen, I learned this. Me and you can grow up in the same household. And I believe this has happened in my family, but I'll use me and you as an example. We can grow up in the same household, and we can hear dad say or mom say, you don't do nothing right, you know? And I can take that as, dang, I don't do nothing right. and I'm a failure. I'm not never going to be nothing. Like I can go down that rabbit trail. And that could be a identity that I begin to walk in and I produce as I get older, is that I don't do nothing right. And then from that same words, if you don't do nothing right, you could take on this perfectionist. So if I do this right, then she'll understand it. So if I do this right, then I'll get her praise. And you have two people grow up in the same household, hear the same word, process it differently, and both of them are still a trauma response.
Yeah.
My trauma response is not feeling good enough. Your trauma response is now being a perfectionist to gain approval.
Yeah,
and it happens all the time.
Yeah, that's so true, man. And I would prefer to take the approach that you take now, having that over communication, compassion, showing love, showing grace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that my son, I'm talking about some of the conversations my sons have, they come to me and I wouldn't have dared said it to my dad, And the blessing is my sons at 16 and 17 years old, they love God. They got a conviction to please God. They're abstinent. They never smoke. They never drunk. Like they're some good boys.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So and that's pretty unheard of.
Yeah.
These days. And I mean, they're teenagers. They're going to fail.
Yeah.
You tell me not to touch that hot plate. Well, I'm going to touch the hot plate just to make sure you're telling me the truth and learn from that mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I grew up, was you could tell me anything, but I'm still going to do it.
I learned by bumping my head.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That did put a knot on there. I probably don't want to do that no more.
So we talked about your kids, man, you being a dad and your history and everything growing up. I want to just, let's touch on and help men be better husbands in their household. So,
gotcha.
So what's a couple of things that you are sure to do with your wife to show her that, show her love or show her that you're there for her, show her that you're not going to leave? Just like I assume that just like the kids, your wife has that brokenness as well.
Yeah.
And so how did you go the extra mile to show her that I'm here to stay, babe? I'm fighting. Let's go.
Well, first, my wife, we both heard from God that was my wife and I was her husband. But like you said, because of how she was raised, because of the traumatic experiences, because of how the men were in her life, she was a runner. And she always testifies this. When we were dating, she broke up with me like 4 or 5 times. Oh my goodness. And being a person that dealt with rejection, that was hard.
Yeah.
But God really used her breaking up with me to cause me to heal from rejection. But I would tell her, I'm like, listen, I'm not going nowhere. I don't care after you run. Because she was a runner. So when we had conflict or things didn't look like it was supposed to be, or even when God used me to trigger some of the wounds that she still had because he wanted her to heal, she didn't know that it was God at the time. She looking at that, you bringing problems. And so she wants to run, and she wasn't running to a man. She was running to be by herself. She was running to safety.
Yeah. Harboring it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so no matter how much she ran, I would always profess to her, listen, I ain't going nowhere. God told me you my wife. I done went to God a couple times, like, Lord, is you sure? Yeah. Because this don't seem right. I said, God never changed his mind.
He put that stamp on.
Exactly. So since he don't change his mind, I'm not changing my mind. And so I just stood. I stood on business, as they say in today's age. I stood 10 toes down and I listened to her, and I still listen to her to do everything I can to make her feel safe, to make her know that I'm not going nowhere, to allow her to understand that she's no longer in a place of she's doing things on her own or by herself, that she has help and that she doesn't always have to figure things out because God has graced her with the man with the vision. And one of the greatest assets for me as a husband, and I believe that every husband can benefit from, is we have to stay intentional about our wives. We get into a place where we can start going with the flow, or we get so focused on business and providing and all of these different things when sometimes our wife just need us.
Yeah.
She just need us to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning, I ain't gonna say I've learned, I'm learning to be in the moment with my wife and not always talk about the business ideas, not always talk about church, not always talk about ministry, not always talk about what we're doing or what we have to do, but have some time where we can just sit and talk about us and make each other laugh and enjoy each other's company, because we can get so caught up in the technicalities of the relationship that you forget to be in the moment with your person.
Yeah.
And you have to have those conversations. You have to be in the moment with your person in order for that intimacy to continue to grow, so y'all can grow closer together.
It's so easy to become business partners.
Yes.
It's so easy to become, just roommates.
Yes.
Because like you said, you're talking about what needs to be done at the house. You're talking about what needs to be done at the business. And I find me and my wife doing that. Like, we got the kids' appointments, we got the foundation to do, we got the podcast. Like,
it's so easy.
And that, man, that's so, like, I'm sitting here just feeling so much guilt while you're saying this, because I need to just sit in that moment with my wife and spend that intimate time with her. And just, even if we don't talk.
You know what my wife has taught me? And she learned this in therapy. And I kind of, when I went to therapy, it reiterated to me, check in with each other. So we do 2 check-ins. And it's not always, scripted, but I'll call her, or she'll call me, or she'll text me, or I'll text her, and we'll say, what have I done to frustrate you or to hurt you that you didn't say anything about? This is an opportunity for you to let me know. And then she'd be like, well, nothing, but when you did this one time, it did make me feel like that. Oh, okay, babe. Well, that wasn't my intentions. It allows us to have those conversations outside of conflict, so it don't lead to conflict. Yeah. But then another thing that we do to check in is, babe, what can I do to love on you or support you this week or today? And that right there is thebomb.com, because we can feel like we're dotting all the I's or crossing all the T's. And I asked my wife, what can I do to love on you or support you? Well, when you get done today, I just need some attention.
Yeah.
I just need to feel you in my arms, or I need to be in your arms. I just want to lay with you. It gives the opportunity to meet the need without assuming that we're meeting the need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's big, man. And to spend that quality time.
And
opening up that line of communication.
Yeah.
I tell my wife all the time, we need CCC. I need clear, concise communication.
Right.
On everything, whether it's this, I need to go pick the kids up to here.
Right.
We need to go here.
Me too.
Or our relationship.
Right.
I don't need you to say, hey, just go over there and do that. No.
Right.
Clear, concise communication. And that to me is a big part of my relationship with my kids.
Yes.
It's a big part of my relationship with my wife, that I want you to 100% know if I'm mad, if I'm happy, or we're doing this, because, man, there's how many problems are in a marriage whenever you don't know what the other person's feeling.
And you have to read the other person's mind. I told my wife this. I said, I don't know what you need in the moment. And so if I don't know what you need in the moment, and you have an expectation for what I should be for you or be to you that you didn't articulate to me, I said, babe, I'm going to let you down every time. I said, so do me a favor without pointing the finger at me, because if you point the finger at somebody, they're going to get defensive. If I say, Ryan, you don't love your wife, and you don't do this, you don't do this. If you don't agree with me, you're going to be like, Vince, I just bought my wife something to eat, and I make sure that my wife, you're going to defend yourself because you don't see it that way. And so one thing that I told her that works for me is, tell me how you feel and what you need without pointing the finger at me. And so it changes her language into, I need some attention. I need some affection.
Yeah.
And we, like you said, we got superhero syndrome. So you tell me what you need, I'm diving in to give it to you. Or instead of saying, I feel you do this, or I feel you do that, and put me on a defense, I feel unheard when this happens, or I feel insecure if I don't hear from you all day. It attaches a feeling to how you actually feel versus you telling me what I'm not doing, and it's not my intention to not do it. I don't know that I'm not doing it, but it gives me the opportunity to do it.
Exactly.
Without conflict.
And like you opened up to your sons and let them have that open, free space to speak, and and still, you weren't supposed to get defensive, but you did. It's so easy to want to defend that. But man, whenever it's pointed out and you learn from that, like, to grow constantly from that is big, and the potential to continue to grow. Like, just because you had this conversation 6 months ago doesn't mean you don't need to have it again.
Right.
Because we change. We're, ebb and flow the whole way through. So I may have been doing something that you pointed out then. Well, I may be doing something else now, or not doing something
right.
that you need to point out, and I need to re-click.
I think this is it. Yeah, absolutely. To go back into this space, one thing I realize is we cannot bully our kids into submission. If we bully our kids into submission, and we're doing that in front of our wives or our person, and we have conflict and we get to talking to them how we talk to the kids, and they're going to be like, you treat me like I treat the kids. Yeah. So we have to love our kids. The Bible says this. The Bible says the goodness of the Lord leads a man to repentance. So that means by itself that God is there's not always consequences. There's not always correction. Sometimes God will bless us or love us or allows us to understand that he understands us to get us on the right path. Yeah. And so with that being said, sometimes we just got to pour on a little bit more love.
It cures a lot, don't it?
Absolutely.
A lot. So you've kind of hit on a little bit, but my last question for you is how, you take your car in for maintenance. You go get the tires checked, you go get the oil replaced, hey, give it a what do they call it? A 22-point inspection or whatever it is. So how do you put that? You've hit on it a couple times. You and your wife do check-ins together.
Right.
And, have that open line of communication. Is there anything else that you and your wife do now to make sure that your relationship and your marriage is maintenanced?
We do date night once a week. Once a week, every week we do date night. Even if we had a disagreement or we got upset while we getting dressed, we're going out on this date night. Because something about when you get dressed and you being intentional and going out with each other, it's a different atmosphere. Sometimes the atmosphere of your house isn't conducive for the connection. Yeah. And so you have to, if this is the plan, outside of checking in and doing all of those things to be intentional about your person, keep dating them.
Yeah.
Keep dating your wife.
That's huge.
Absolutely.
We only get one. Our kids go through so much stuff and the foundation, just so much work that me and my wife put date night off because we're like, hey, that's something that can wait. We need to get this taken care of, or they need to have this surgery or need to have this.
Right.
And we put that off. And dude, every time that we go out, we're like, we need to do this more.
Yes,
spend more time.
Absolutely.
So that's really huge.
And I like to eat. My wife likes to eat. And so a lot of our date nights end up at a restaurant, but my wife is so spontaneous. She actually just booked we just went to a place called Twisted Painting or something like that. And you bring a bottle of wine and we painted 2 different canvases, but when we put it together, it was one. So she'll book that. She'll book massages. She'll go to an escape room. Like, she likes experiences. Yeah. And so I love that she brought that to the table because I've always been a person that goes with the flow. Yeah. And I'm spontaneous. Like, I'll out the blue say, let's go to Dave & Buster's and play all this game. Yeah. I'm very spontaneous, but she's very intentional. She's very planned out. And so I had to tell her, like, listen, don't be so mad at me if I don't plan, baby. That's your strength. Yeah. Make the plan. I'm going, That's exactly. But even with that, I still have to make sure that I do plan sometime because it allows her to feel pursued. Yeah. And know that there is intentionality in that aspect as well.
Yeah, that's me and my wife 100%. I'll be like the one, hey, let's go do this. She's like, well, hold on. Is it on the calendar? No, it's not. Well, we're going.
Right. And you need some of that spontaneity sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what makes y'all fit together.
Figuring that out. And we could go down a rabbit hole, and I'm not going to, like, figuring that out together. Like, what, like, hey, we're going over here. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to figure it out.
Right.
That, I can't even think of the word, but you all together, getting together and figuring it out, what's going to happen, or just like letting go.
Right.
Just having no care in the world, and whatever happens.
Right.
That right there too brings a lot of, closeness.
And you saying figuring it out together, I realized one of the biggest challenges that I had with my wife was when we got together, I was very independent. So like I said, I grew up in a household with just mom, no dad. So I cook, I clean, I pick the kids up from practice, I do the laundry. Like, I take care of me.
Yeah.
So she comes into the picture and she prides herself in doing these things. And I got me. And she's like, well, what do you need me for? And so I had to start relinquishing some of those things to her or figuring out how we could do it together. But then also because she's so good at that aspect of it and doing some of the administrative stuff is even more serious, that I have to be intentional about loving on her, about massaging her feet, about taking her out. Because if not, then she's going to feel like she's doing all of this stuff for me, but I'm not pouring into her cup.
Yeah,
she's become the administrator of everything, but where is she getting her love from?
Yeah. That's huge, man.
Yeah.
That's real big. So real quick, these, tell anybody that's listening, because man, I'm fired up just being in this room talking to you for the last hour.
Likewise.
And so, man, I want other people to feel that as well. So is there anywhere on social media that people can find or reach out?
Not Your Average Minister.
Okay.
On all platforms.
All right.
Not Your Average Minister.
Okay. I'll
That's
put
how
that
you
on the
find it.
screen as well. So that
Thank you.
So, man, I want to thank you for driving down and being on the Dad Show and being vulnerable, telling your story, telling your testimony, man, because it's helped me today. So I know you're going to help many more. So
absolutely.
I can't thank you enough for being here.
I appreciate you too, Ryan.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
for having me.
Thank you, man.
And thank God for divine connection.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is awesome. This is great. So the rest of you, thank you for being with us. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. As always, we love you, we care about you, and we're proud of you. Hope you have a blessed day.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast. Please like, review, and subscribe.